On the last episode of Menace, the Ken story, Ken was still locked up. However, he started to gain some acceptance about everything, and he was able to see the part that he played in the situation. After being there for a little while, he was able to move back to Building 2, where he got his GED, started going to anger management, and he got a job. And while that job didn't pay much, it did open the door to something else. One Sunday, Ken went into the visitation room to clean, because that was his job. After he was done, he was told by one of the guys in his pod that his cousin was interested in him. While initially apprehensive, Ken eventually took the bait. And that's how he met Mia. Ken started chatting with Mia, and she started to visit him. The rest, as we say, is history. And now, Chapter 21, Time, narrated by Shandora Warren. I came home in 2005. I moved back into Grandma's house with Mom, and by that point, Pops had gotten out too. Things seemed to be a little bit different. Mom and Pops were different. They weren't fussing and fighting. I take that back. They were fussing, but I guess they had grown tired of fighting. It didn't seem like they were getting high though, and that made all the difference. As for me, I had entered a completely different phase of life too. For the first time, I actually had to go out and try to find a job. I had to do that with the understanding that I had just come home from prison and hadn't ever worked an actual job in my entire life. Making matters worse, so much had changed. In the years that I had been away, the internet had become the main source of job hunting. I ain't know about all that. I wasn't looking for jobs before I left, but if I had been, I imagine I probably would have done the paper and pen thing, but I wasn't trying to go back to prison, so I had to do what I had to do. And that's where connection came back into play. Mia had a computer, so she started helping me apply for jobs online. She did a resume for me and everything. And after a few weeks of being home, I had an interview at a factory. I was kind of excited about the interview, but nervous at the same time. I hadn't ever been on an interview before, but I was excited because I was ready to start life. I had been gone for a while. I was ready to have my own place. I was too old to be living with Mom and Pops. I was just ready. But when I got to that interview, I froze. I felt like they were asking all of the questions in Chinese. I wasn't prepared, but I don't really think preparation was the only issue. One of the questions that they asked was, "What do you think your weakest trait is?" I lied. I told them that I don't have any weak traits. Realistically, I'm quick to anger. But who's going to say that about themselves at an interview? A few days later, I got a call saying that they had found a better candidate. I asked the lady on the phone a question. Did that person have a better weak trait? What weak trait does a person need to have in order to load boxes off of a conveyor belt? She hung up on me. I was just mad, and I felt like she should have been mad too. I was real frustrated that day, but luck was on my side. Ma sent me to the store to get some of those watermelon drinks that she liked. I walked in, and who did I see? Hot Boy. For a second, we both just stood and looked at each other. The first thing I thought about was the last time I saw him. I was getting high in the bathroom at my Labor Day party, and he walked in on me. We had some words, and I hadn't seen him since. That had been years prior to that point. I wondered if his mind had gone to that same place. But suddenly, Hot Boy flashed a huge grin. He walked towards me with his arms open wide. "My nigga," he said. We hugged, and it was genuine. There was no bad blood between us, and I knew it. "When you get out?" he asked. I told him that I had been out for a few weeks. "That's what's up," he said. "You working?" I told Hot Boy about the factory interview and the conversation that I had had when the lady called to tell me that I hadn't gotten the job. Hot Boy laughed. "You always had a smart mouth," he said. "But look, If you're serious about working, I got something for you. My mouth answered before my mind even thought about it. Oh, nah. I ain't never doing nothing to go back to prison. And don't even tell Rob you see me. Hot Boy laughed hard. His face was red and everything. He pulled his wallet out of his back pocket and opened it. He retrieved a business card and passed it over to me. I read it. Carter's Home Improvements, LLC. Owner, Keyshawn Carter. I looked at him in absolute bewilderment. Hot Boy, when your name become Keyshawn Carter? I asked. We both laughed. I gotta go, said Hot Boy. Call me later. We got business to discuss. And boy, did we have business to discuss. Hot Boy had his own place. I went over there that night, and he caught me up with everything that had taken place while I was gone. When Hot Boy told me how everything played out, I realized that time is a fickle whore. And I mean that in the most disrespectful way possible. This is what he told me. He said, first of all, me and Rob ain't kicking it no more. I know, almost can't believe it either. A lot of stuff changed after you left, and it happened real quick. As soon as you got locked up, Rob started talking about pushing Adrian up to be the new cocaine dude. He wasn't ready, and we all knew it. Adrian was barely making it as a weed boy. I went to Rob and told him that I ain't think it was a good idea. This nigga told me that he ain't pay me to think. And since I thought it was my place to be in business that wasn't mine, he told me that he wasn't going to let me make no money that week. I was mad, but I had a little money saved, so I wasn't really tripping on it. But then he started doing that whenever he felt like it. But not to Adrian, only to me. On top of that, this nigga started letting Adrian talk down to me like he was somebody. He was on a real life power trip, and Rob was going with it. He felt like he was untouchable because Rob was his uncle. We all saw it, but I guess everybody was seeing how it was all going to play out. Adrian ended up getting in Tommy's face one day, and you already know Tommy put his hands on him. When Rob found out, him and Tommy had a huge falling out. Tommy walked away from the crew, and Mike walked away with him. Everything that I ever knew was over. Mike and Tommy had been with Rob since I was a little boy, and they just walked away to start their own crew. Rob had killed Lorenzo. Mac was working with Tony, and you were locked up. The only thing left was a little nigga that thought he was going to say whatever he wanted to me. And Rob, who ain't respect me enough to check him. I decided that it was time for me to get out. And it was a good thing, too. Adrian got busted like 2 weeks later. And he took Rob down with him. All of that happened within 6 months of you getting locked up. Adrian took a deal, so he ain't get no time. Rob had a good lawyer, so he only got like 4 years. After that, I went to this apprenticeship program. I worked for a couple of years, and then I started my business. I still knew people who were hustling, and they were most of my clients in the beginning. They felt good about taking a chance on me. One day, I went to do some work for this dude named Antonio. I had met him through Rob a few years before that. He had some wiring issues at the strip club that he owned. He was a Rob type of dude, money-wise, but he had a bunch of businesses and a bunch of girlfriends. I got there, and a girl was in the office with him. You would never guess who it was. Shalonda. Apparently, Shalonda was his main girlfriend, but he had like 3 or 4 other girls. They all knew about each other. They just stayed in line. I don't think she recognized me. She was more grown up looking, but it was definitely her. That was probably 2 years ago. Earlier this year, one of the other girlfriends named Sharon killed Antonio in front of Shalonda. Then she killed herself. The whole story I heard was crazy. But Shalonda ain't stayed single long. Not long afterwards, she started dating Antonio's lawyer, a white dude. Can you believe that? Anyway, I heard she's living in some condo in the rich part of town. I don't think she deal with people like us no more. But yeah, what's up with you though? What's up with me? Whoa. Let's back up a little bit. That was too much information for him to just be like, what's up with you though? Everybody left the crew after I got locked up. Then Adrian got Rob locked up. Meanwhile, Adrian took a deal and didn't get any time. But I really couldn't have cared less about any of that. Shalonda ended up with Antonio, the same Antonio that I didn't trust to be around her. Her friend Sharon's boyfriend, Antonio. How the heck did that happen? And Hot Boy said he had a bunch of girlfriends, but she was the main one. I couldn't even make that match up with the Shalonda I knew. I remember when she found out about me cheating with that Melanie chick, and she made me make a decision. How was that the same girl that made herself comfortable with being one of Antonio's girls? And what did that mean? One of his girls. I wondered if she was out there. Antonio obviously owned a strip club because that's where Hot Boy had gone to do the electrical work, and she was there. But doing what? Those types of men weren't above pimping their women out. I'm thinking, I knew I couldn't trust that nigga. I go to prison for a few years and he done turned my girl all the way out. Whew, I tried to warn her, but I probably was the wrong person to do that, all things considered. Meanwhile, I guess Antonio's life caught up with him. Sharon killed him in front of Antonio, and then she killed herself. Regardless of any of the factors involved, that had to hurt the mess out of Shalonda. I had been through it. I watched my brother get killed. I didn't know how Shalonda had gotten involved with Antonio, and I didn't know how her and Sharon had gotten to that point. But what I did know was how bad it had to have hurt her to watch that. And that's what I meant when I said that time was a fickle whore. All of that had happened a few months earlier. A few months. That could have made all the difference. If I had come home a few months earlier, it wouldn't have gone down like that. I know I wouldn't have, because I would have stepped in. I wouldn't ever have settled for letting Shalonda be one of his girls, and I wouldn't have let her settle for it either. I would have pulled her out of that. I don't care what happened in our past. We just would have had to figure out a way to get past it, regardless of how hard that would have been. Yeah, maybe Sharon would have still killed Antonio and herself, but I think Shalonda would have been a little bit more removed from it if I was home. I would like to have think that she would have been with me. But the damage was done. That nigga went and got himself killed and created all kinds of damage. He pushed her into the arms of a white man, a wealthy one at that. What was I going to do with that? I thought back to the conversation that I had with old man Casper when I was locked up. He told me not to go looking for Shalonda until I could give her what she deserves. I had grown a lot since I first got locked up, so I saw it differently. Maybe I could have taken Shalonda away from Antonio and built something with her on a basic level. She probably would have been okay with that, but the terms were different. From what it looked like, she was with a wealthy man that could give her things that I could only dream of. I couldn't compete with that, and I didn't want to ask her to move backwards. The timing was all wrong. Once again, I had to wait for our lives to align. That seemed to always be our story. So for the moment, I had to let her go. Again. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow Shinny Tells a Story on Facebook and Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. If you like to purchase books by Shandora Warren, they're all available on Amazon in ebook, paperback, and some in hardback formats. Please like, follow, and share this podcast with your friends, family, and frenemies, because all relationships matter, even the toxic ones. Thank you so much for helping me to create the world that I want to see. Oh yeah, you're welcome. Shine, little girl.